I went to 9 bookstores in 2 days. Here's everywhere I went.
This 2-day self-guided book crawl started out in Brooklyn. The Ripped Bodice is a romance-only bookstore housing a plethora of contemporary works as well as titles in every subgenre imaginable. Even if romance isn't your thing, they have sections dedicated to lit fics and classics, and if even that fails you, their selection of candles, stationery, and merch will give every shopper the happily ever after they're looking for. 20 minutes down the road is one of the Books Are Magic locations. This aptly named store has every contemporary fiction work you can think of, as well as nonfiction titles and an entire room dedicated to kids' books. Unfortunately, that's all we had time for in Brooklyn, but let me know what your favorite Brooklyn bookstores are for my next trip. Day 2 starts the Manhattan leg of this challenge. After taking the train into Midtown, then a subway to the lower end of the Upper East Side, I paid a visit to Albertine. They specialize in French titles, so if that's your thing, you're gonna be very happy here. If you're like me and you're coming for the ambiance, you will also be happy, but you will leave empty-handed. Right outside of Albertine is the downtown bus, so I headed back to Midtown to visit Argosy, which specializes in rare and antique books. I was hoping to find a really unique classic work to take home, but this store is clearly for elite book collectors. The vibes here were extremely studious and serious, except for the prints and the New Yorker covers. Those were deeply unserious. After Argosy, I put on my Brave Girl pants and took the subway down to my least favorite area, Times Square, but these 2 bookstores made it worth it. Books Kinokuniya is massive. I spent upwards of an hour here. The first floor is Japanese literature and other English titles. The second floor houses their cafe, where I stopped for lunch. They also have a huge manga and comic book collection on the second floor. Then in the basement, you can find cute stationery, pens, collectible items. It was a 10 out of 10 experience. I will definitely go back. A few avenues over is the Drama Bookshop, which is a haven for all of you artsy folks. I'm talking theater lovers, screenwriters, music composers, etc. Honestly, I expected that I'd pay a visit here just to kind of poke around, look at the elaborate ceiling art that wraps around most of the store. However, they had a really impressive selection of biographies and a small but powerful section of fiction work, so I couldn't help but pick out a few titles. Then I took a leisurely walk down a Flatiron and paid a visit to Rizzoli, which boasts as being the most beautiful bookstore in New York. I haven't been to every bookstore in New York, but this place is beautiful. The inventory was full of dark horses. None of the books I picked up from here were titles that were on my list, but they are books that I think I'm gonna end up loving. After Rizzoli, I took the subway down to Soho to pay a visit to what was probably my favorite bookstore of the day. McNally Jackson quite literally had every book that I was looking for on my wish list. What was most impressive to me was the diversity of their authors and titles. I've never been to a bookstore that had a floor-to-ceiling shelf that was dedicated to Caribbean and African writers. After McNally Jackson, I took a cab downtown to Chinatown to visit You and Me Books. This small but mighty store had the coziest vibes I've ever experienced and a really well-curated selection of fiction works. And out of all the stores I visited on this bookstore crawl, You and Me definitely takes the cake for the cutest sticker selection. After all that shopping, I had to get home expeditiously because look at all of these purchases. I carried these books around all day. Someone give me an Olympic medal and tell me what bookstores I need to visit on my next trip home.